You're listening to Cards to the Moon, a podcast about trading cards from both a collector and investor perspective. We hope you'll stick around for the ride as we take a deep dive into the state of the hobby, share some hot takes, hopefully some useful advice, and fun stories along the way. Hey guys, welcome back to Cards to the Moon. This is episode 377, and my name is Clark from 5cardguys.com. You can also find me at 5cardguys, all spelled out, all one word, on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and on TikTok. Co-hosting with me, as usual, is Hyung, who is at Cho Hyung on IG and YouTube as well. All right, off the top, I don't know if you saw, but I just did an IG reel and YouTube short on Benny Montgomery, who was the 8th overall MLB draft pick by the Colorado Rockies in 2021. And the reason I made a video on him was two reasons, really. One is that at the age of 23, he just announced his retirement from professional baseball. And two, although his career was cut short, we talked about Benny on this pod before because, if you remember, he inscribed and autographed two very memorable Bowman Chrome cards, including one in which he signed Borat as his name. So check out the reel on my page at 5cardguys to see what the other one said. But Hyung, I thought we could take this opportunity, just to ask you in particular, because I know you're heavily into baseball. How hard is prospecting in baseball and, by extension in the hobby? And do you have guys, if you could think back, that you were high on in the past, but it didn't turn out, or vice versa, when the player just became a stud almost out of nowhere with little hype coming up in the system?
Yeah, I mean, prospecting is always a different game on its own. It's something that I think people new coming into the hobby will never understand until they actually, I guess, experience kind of like how prospecting works. It's like a totally different game than your typical sports card collecting, right? Because you're relying heavily on, fundamentals, which is the actual minor league baseball and, high school baseball, college baseball. So if you follow that as just, a fan, I think that's massive in terms of helping identifying prospects. Just knowing things earlier than, the market, when the general market kind of catches on, or when sports publications catch on, because I think that's why a lot of people like it, because there's so much high upside. But Obviously with that, if you break down statistically how many people actually make it, and not only make it, they become the superstar, right? Is you can't produce multiple superstars. I mean, in general, I think, sports in general have done a great job of providing amazing draft classes year in, year out. You see that with basketball, you see that with football, you see that with baseball, where talent pool, at least you don't have that next Frank Thomas, and it's like 2-3 years down the road, right? Where you're seeing, Wemby, you're seeing Cooper Flagg, you're seeing, Connor Griffin, whoever it is, it's every year there's a new prospect, right? So I think that keeps the prospecting very healthy. And that's the fundamental of it, is that's the potential. That is why people enter that space, is because if you knew Connor Griffin before he was Connor Griffin, if you knew, Cooper Flagg before he was Cooper, well, Cooper Flagg's a little different because the hype comes with it, and then cards are the first access. But this is where Bowman prospecting specifically becomes more advantageous, is, you have that time period to buy in early, right? Of these prospects, right? So that's the whole point. You buy in early, hoping that, they're going to have a successful minor league career to boost them up to that MLB level. And then there's that second level of when they make the majors, it doesn't mean their card is going to guarantee hold. There's going to be another crash, essentially, before they establish their careers and become even a superstar, right? Even if you're a young superstar, you probably won't make your money if you're holding, right?
Yeah.
So there's life cycles where you need to stay away from or you need to participate.
That's a good way of putting it, because to your point, there's always that sell marker, as a friend of the pod, Paul Hickey, would say, right. When if you pick up someone before they enter the draft or as they're being drafted, it's usually the best time right before they're called up to sell, right. In most cases, because like you said, there's always a crash that happens afterwards, because it's hard to adjust to Major League Baseball at that level, right? So yeah, that's kind of what we are seeing a lot. And I like what you said too. If you look at the numbers, if you kind of step back, just a super small percentage that become actual superstars. Like, that's the reality of playing pro ball and how hard it is to make it. And of course, it's kind of, you only see the successful stories, and it's kind of warps what the reality actually is until you kind of see stories like Benny Montgomery retiring at the age of 23, which is, sad, unfortunate, but I'm sure it happens more often than we think.
For sure. And I think it's important to, like, if you look at the context of like ripping, I think there's a lot of like value in it too, where it's not necessarily, we talk a lot about how ripping is worthless, which from like that day, maybe it's true, but I'm saying this is where Bowman prospecting kind of gives you some leeway too. Because if you're ripping Bowman, you have cards that you think is worthless at the time, which they are. But
right.
There's so many times I could go through a stack and find Tariq Skubal first Bowman Chromes.
Right.
You know what I mean? That sell for whatever they sell, maybe $100 in a PSA 10, 150, whatever it is. But at one point they were worth, like, Tariq Skubal wasn't even a guy like when you're prospecting. So there's stuff like that keeps people in that prospecting game, because there's other ways that you could still win. And for people to say that ripping is a net zero or, pure like negative ROI, you're right for the most part, but there are plays that end up giving you that advantage down the road, right? Where,
sure.
At least you're collecting some of that back where you're not accounting for, right? So I don't mind ripping prospecting because of that, or even like breaks, for instance. If you're, pay a little more, you might be taking a gamble, but at least you're getting, the first Chrome base cards. Right. And enough of them where it's like 20 of a future superstar that ends up, selling for $200 each eventually. There's stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's always a possibility. And that reminds me of my two buddies that I started 5-card guys with back then. You've heard that story on the pod before. Juan Soto, 16-year-old kid. Who's that guy? You know what I mean? And then years later,
especially
you're like,
with that image. You're like, this guy's not a baseball guy. This guy weighs 150 pounds.
Yeah, exactly. Why is he wearing an oversized helmet?
Double ear flap? Is it? No.
Yeah. Oh man, that's hilarious. But then, on the other side, on the flip side, because there's a lot of hype with these younger guys, the top 10 prospects, usually the price or the value is baked in. So you got to be careful there too. Right. Because as there's more information out there on the internet, more scouting reports, you're paying a premium for the top 10 guys. So there's that side of the game too.
And the thing is, what I've learned from it is there's people that play in the really like, oh, this guy's true. Like they follow minor league baseball and this guy's truly a good baseball player. But I'm saying you stay away from that, because you got to look at it in the context of Major League Baseball, what they want. So if let's just, and this is the biggest argument. I was a baseball player. I was the scrappy one. I was the guy that was taking you out at second base, breaking a double play. I was the guy trying to run the catcher if I had to, get the momentum. None of that matters. So it's like, even though that's your favorite type of archetype, knowing that minor league baseball player is like, kind of like, you like him and he's good, right? Is that card going to reflect MLB market prices of what they want to market as kind of like their play, right? So, and that's where, it goes back to top 10 prospecting. It gets really expensive because sometimes overpay. You have to overpay for these type of prospects. But I would say that's safer than kind of like that. You're finding that needle in the haystack prospect, and usually what happens is, I'm telling you, you only have it because you ripped and that prospect was a nobody and you had it, tucked away somewhere, and then you find it 3-4 years down the road that he became somebody, right? That's usually the case. It's like, you're not going to sit here and buy $2 prospect autos hoping that, in 3-4 years, they're going to be thousands of dollars, because realistically, to me, that's tougher. That you're going to have a lot of base cards or base autos that are kind of like worthless, or even color autos I have so many color autos that are worthless. It's the 98% that don't make it. Right. So that's why it's better to focus on the top 10 prospects.
Yes, for sure. But my sweet spot is the top from 10 to 20. That's the one I like to.
Yes.
Because there's usually a discount on those players.
Yeah, they could go up, right?
Yes.
Into that top 10.
Case in point, PCA.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah.
10 to 20, and look at him now, right?
Yeah.
Like he jumped another level. But
For sure.
top 10 is usually safer. You're paying a premium, but you are paying a premium. That's the thing. And kind of what you're saying, going for like the outside of the top 50, that's kind of like penny stocks.
Penny stocks. You're dealing with penny stocks. Yeah. If you're into that, it's not bad to, a couple players, I'm down with that. You get a couple of reds or oranges in those players.
Sure. Tom Brady,
Tom Brady, you just never know. Right? But going back, when we're talking about Benny Montgomery and, the whole thing about, how prospects could, end early. I know how much did that Borat card sell for? Premium.
Yeah.
Had to be a big premium. Like 10K?
Yeah, I would love that 10K? Card still.
Yeah.
We have to check this.
And I think that's important to discuss too, is just saying, guys, like, baseball is such a difficult game. Like, especially for someone that's entering adulthood, because there are so many adult things that come with being a Major League Baseball player, a prospect. When you're 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, you're still growing up. You're still not there. So it's very difficult. And to have these expectations, Benny Montgomery had all the talent, right? Like, that, but it's not as easy as just because you have the talent means that you're going to have a long career either, right? So, I understand how difficult the game is, in general, and talent becomes secondary. So there's a lot of, I guess, risk in that a lot of people don't look at that side of what actually happens. So you got to make sure you're in a right environment as a player. You got to make sure the organization cares about you and is nurturing you for your mental well-being. You're a kid, not to spend your big signing bonuses. There's all these little things that we don't even take into consideration, but we're dumping thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars into something that, hey man, it's bigger than just baseball. Like baseball is a small portion. These kids still have to develop. They have to learn hard lessons, and that's part of the process, right? So, buyer beware, when you're into prospecting.
It's a tough game. Let's end off this segment with 5 names that have been drafted recently, and you tell me which ones you're still high on, okay? And you're like hopeful with. Okay. Because these guys, speaking of young guys, still very young, but there's a couple obvious ones that I'm sure you still believe in. But starting from 2025, Eli Willits got drafted number 1. 2024, Travis Bazana. I remember the hype around Bazana when he was first coming up. 2023, guy named Paul Skeens. 2022, Jackson Holliday. And 2021, Henry Davis.
Those are very random. I'm just Henry Davis, like first pick overall, right?
Yeah.
Back in 2023. I remember
you were pretty high on Henry Davis back in the day.
I was. Number 1 pick. You can't really go wrong. But I don't think he's had the type of career that everybody was expecting him to be, to have, especially being the first pick overall. But we could. Where do you want to start?
No, just any of those names where you're like, you thought it would turn out better, and it's still a possibility, right? But I guess Henry Davis would fall into that camp.
I mean, Henry Davis already expired in terms of that process. So that was the thing. It was, you have a college guy, your window of frame is like really tight, right? Yeah. So that's the difference between a high school prospect and a college prospect, where, the organization might have 3-4 years, with a high school prospect, and he's 21, 22, and 4 years in with the organization, rather than a college guy who spends, 3-4 years in a college program and then completely has to adapt to, minor league and major league baseball, and you're in the show and you're expected to perform because, you're at that age, right? So I think Henry Davis, it was one of those things where, he had a tight timeline, and, and like I said, he's still maturing as a player. You don't know what type of player you're going to get. And that's the realities of baseball. It's not like,
sure,
hey, Acuna or Soto, he's 18, 19 years old in the big leagues hitting 300. That's the standard. That's not the standard. I'm telling you right now, that is not the right. standard. And that never happens.
Yeah.
It rarely happens. And I think everybody expects that from everyone, but reality, you get one a year, if that. And Kevin McGonigal would be that guy this year, right? Who's really fulfilling that role, right? But Eli Willits, like, those are guys that are still young. Like, he's super 18 young. Years old and he's hitting 300. Those are the guys you want to follow, and they're going to carry more hype, right? Where it goes back to the scenario of, the Cards have, Eli when he's 18 years old, as opposed to 21, coming from a college program, and that's where development occurs, right? It's like they get comfortable with life. They understand how it is. So for me, before, even high school prospects were like, I don't know, there's so much that can go wrong, but there's a lot of things that, align with organizations when you have them for, the 3, 4, or 5 years, right? So, like there's a lot of opportunity there with Eli. I think he's going to be a great player. He's going to be, a big leaguer. So it's just a matter of time. So it's buying right.
Yep. For sure. And I know our buddy DC listens to the pod. He had to choose between Acuna and Kevin Maitan. He chose Maitan. I'm just saying, not everyone bats 1,000.
But he has the black label.
But he'll appreciate that shout out. And I looked at Travis Bazzana, decent stats, 261, 7 homers. But again, the perfect time to sell was when he was first called up, like it usually is. And then you got Jackson Holliday batting 198 this year. The Orioles not having the greatest season, but he's still a young guy too. So
baseball's tough. And that's why it's like Travis Bazzana, like he's going to hit, right? But it's like that might not happen till he's 25, 26, 27 years old, right? Sure. And that's the realities of it. It's like you have superstars in the making, but it's like, well, at what price point are you going to buy at peak? Yep. Because he might have a bigger dip in the next 2-3 years before, it goes up again. So it's like, that's why prospecting is so hard, is like you have to understand the timelines of baseball in general, right? Yeah. And when to sell. And we mentioned it earlier how, the right selling period would be, right when they get called up, right? Because now there's a new expectation that he has to fulfill that at a really younger age to be a superstar in the big leagues. And that really doesn't happen, guys, right?
Yep. And I'll end off with this. Prospecting is hard in baseball, but in the hobby as well, because out of the 5 names I gave you, the person I definitely wouldn't have bought is a pitcher. And, Paul Skeens happens to be the one exception here that just is lights out. His value keeps going up. So super hard to predict, but that's the game we're playing.
And I think the game is changing, like I think Paul Skeens totally changed the game. Like he proved that there was a market, a pitcher's market, right? And it helped Kershaw prices. It helped Verlander prices. It helped every single price. So like I said, we're in a whole different marketplace. Like we don't know. We just don't know how this market is going to all unfold. And we could, speculate like we're doing, but realities is it could change. It has changed. Now is our catchers going to, get the love they deserve, right? Do they go on different standards, right? And I think as the hobby evolves, I think it's changing. I think because we're valuing it properly, meaning the really high end cards, how there was a I guess a unequal distribution of why did one card sell for 1.5 million, but another of the same card of a same caliber player sell for 50,000. There was way too much of a gap of speculative value. But what you're seeing is even the GOATs of every sport, you're seeing their cards like climbing.
Sure. Properly valued, right? Whether it was deflated or inflated at the time, right? The market's correcting regardless. And that's where you have to play. Yep. Everything's changing. And, the old adage is true. Change is the only constant. So
love it.
As long as you keep that in mind. Yeah, that's always a wise move. All right, let's move on to hobby headlines. Okay, just kind of switching gears a little bit. Now that we're halfway into the year, it's about that amount of time, like 6 months, since PSA's parent company, Collectors, acquired Beckett. We've seen some changes in Beckett's grading process already, and as well as a redesign, and some info that I read from a recent article explained, what further changes could be coming. Okay, so I want to take this opportunity during this segment to evaluate how we feel about Beckett now and whether Beckett can become at least number 2 again in relevance when it comes to grading. All right, so shout out to sportscollectorsdigest.com, which is where I read the interview. And they actually talked with Beckett's new GM, Colin Hudson, who was pretty much hired by Collectors to help revitalize the Beckett brand. Okay, so before we begin, just a bit of history first for people that are new to the space. Beckett launched its BGS grading service in the late 1990s, right? Dr. James Beckett actually started Beckett about 15 years earlier, but they started the Beckett grading service in the late 90s. That's about 8 years after PSA opened for business. And throughout the 2000s and early 2010s, we're very familiar with that era. PSA and BGS were battling each other for submissions. They're top 2 by far in regards with grading companies competing for the space. But then we all know how BGS has declined since then, slipping to number 4 behind CGC and SGC as well. And by the end of 2025, Beckett graded 842,000 cards versus 19.26 million cards by PSA. Okay, so there's the context. First quote by Colin Hudson. He says, quote, "They want to make Beckett great again." So he continues that, quote, "They kind of got outcompeted. Beckett kind of got outcompeted by more than a number of companies, but the brand has still remained awesome." So let's start there. Do you agree with that statement
100%.
Or disagree?
100%. And that's why we've talked about it. We should have bought it
all the time.
The brand was low. Like the brand was there. It's an operational issue, right? So that's why if you had, whatever it sold for, it would have been a good investment. So 100%, the brand are they utilizing the brand, the way, I would do it? Probably not, because I think there's a lot more brand value they could squeeze out of it. Especially specifically their black label. They are playing their black label a little bit, which we said that we agreed that, Beckett magazine back in the day and black labels are probably one of Beckett's biggest assets. So I'm 100% agree with that quote.
Nice. And that's a good segue to the next question I had. I don't have much to add to that because we've said it many times on this pod before. We believe in the brand. The brand has staying power, and that's what Beckett has got going for them. But yes, I agree with you on that. But the segue to that is I think they took this idea from us because we talked about this on the pod before, and that's that That's the fact that they're exploring the idea of bringing back a version of the Beckett print magazine.
Amazing.
Which you just mentioned.
Amazing.
So obviously it won't have the price guide, right, that we're nostalgic about. But he says, quote, "I do think that this hobby lends itself to a physical medium." Okay, and then he says, "So a magazine where you can just decompress, take a break from the screens, and read about the hobby. I think that's something we're exploring." So Beckett magazine making a comeback, possibly.
I like it. I like the idea. I think it will be. Why wouldn't they put the price guide? I think that should be a must. Like that would be.
But it changes so frequently now. You could just go online.
But you could go online. But I think you could have AI figure that out really quick. So it wouldn't be an issue of being able to replicate, a monthly, or what if they do annual publication or monthly or maybe quarterly would make more sense. 4 publications a year. Right? Yeah. Market changes. So it's like this was spring, Q1, 2026. These were the prices. And then you look at the Q2 prices and it's like, holy, I want to see the up arrow. I want to see the down arrow. Sure. You could play into nostalgia factor for sure. Maybe not for obviously there's millions and millions of cards now that are being printed. Yeah.
Maybe you do it for the iconic cards.
Or the main sets. Yeah. Iconic cards. And then you have the full, I think you still need somewhat of a price guide, because what was the price guide before? It was not necessarily market data that they're going off of. They're just going off of their pricing system. But now that you have an actual market, you have live data that it's all about, being able to implement that into, and those are the future things that we need to implement, the technology to make the experience better for collectors and users, right? So, and that's going to evolve and change constantly, whether that concept stays in the form of print media or it evolves into, online. You have it on your tablet. You have instant access to price. I don't have to 130 point everything. I don't have to eBay comp everything. I have it right there, so.
Yeah, I think there's something there. You're convincing me otherwise, because I thought why would you want this? But I think maybe, or just off the top of my head right now, you predict what the next, whether it'll go up by a certain amount or down, kind of like this prediction game.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And you could, I don't know. I think there's something there, but yes.
But you look at 130 point, to me, it's great. I love 130 point, but if I had an app that I want the live price, easy.
Yeah.
Beckett, boom. I don't have to go to any other brand. I get the live price right there. And it could be live not on their print publication, but, on their actual app or a digital version, I would want a live pricing.
Okay. Well, I mean, you're making this segment really easy, because that's another question I had for later on, but I'll bring it up now since you brought the app. And in terms of what's coming, Hudson notes that they've already revamped the website, but they do have plans to come out with a new app in July. And with it, Hudson says, quote, "The new web experience will also include a vault functionality such that you can send Beckett orders to the PSA vault and unlock instant offers and eventually sell on eBay. Basically, all the functionality once you're within the PSA vault," end quote. So there you go, an app. Really taking a page out of the PSA playbook. They've had experience with it. Is that a no-brainer for you?
No-brainer. It's ecosystem. We're talking ecosystem. There's a reason why they bought Beckett. Like I said, to a company that doesn't have PSA's infrastructure, Beckett will not be worth what it's worth. To someone like PSA who has the infrastructure that could take Beckett and implement their infrastructure into a company like Beckett, there's enormous value. And that's a business 101 that, I think is so valuable in even, day-to-day transactions with, people. It's like, why would someone want to partner or buy a company? And how do they perceive value? Because, I think a lot of people just see value one way. Oh, Beckett's not worth that much. They did X amount of cards. They're 4th place in grading in the grading race. But it's like, well, that's not why Beckett's valuable. It's like, in the hands of the right beholder, how valuable can Beckett be? That's the question.
Yeah.
And to me, that's exactly how PSA sees it. So to me, it's an ecosystem play, 100%. They know what they're doing. It makes logical sense to me to do it like that.
Yeah, I think that's what will make Beckett unique in that sense, right? Because the brand itself is much bigger than just grading, just slabs, right? But it's a big part of it for sure. But yeah, it's like we talked about the magazine, for example. That's part of the brand.
That would be part of the brand. It wouldn't be how much ROI is this magazine giving me. It's all about where does Beckett sit with the end user in this whole hobby and ecosystem. And that's it. Mm-hmm. When you're not doing anything and then you're on the crapper and then you take a dump, you friggin' reading material, right? So it's just like, it's always top of mind in terms of branding, so to me, it would be that type of play of the value of the magazine. You know what I mean?
I'll say this because I used to be in print, print business as a journalist. Like, print is tough industry to break through in. PSA has their own magazines too. I don't think that's I don't hear much about PSA magazine. Anyone saying, oh yeah, I can't wait for the next PSA magazine edition. But what Beckett has for them, again, brand and the whole nostalgia factor of Beckett magazines, they have to really play heavily into that to even stand a chance to be successful. All right, let's talk numbers now. Apparently, they were roughly grading 4,000 cards on a daily basis at the beginning of this year, 2026. Today, they are now grading 7,000 cards a day. And in May alone, they said Beckett hit 145,000 graded items, which is 49% month-over-month increase. And he cuts and attributes part of that uptick in hiring, almost 100 new roles across the operation. Are you impressed with those numbers at all, or is that a little underwhelming?
No, I think you have to be happy with the direction they're going. Like, it doesn't surprise me though, because I've already identified it was operational, and we've already talked many times that it had nothing to do with the brand. The brand is strong. So what do you address if you purchase Beckett? You address the issues, right? Which is operational. And they did exactly that. And what that does is now they can handle 7,000 cards a day. They're able to handle 4,000. So to me, it's like PSA understands how to run the system in terms of scaling. And I think that's a very important factor and value that PSA brings that a lot of people aren't looking at. It's like PSA is not only valuable because they're selling a bunch of slabs. They're valuable is because their ecosystem works and they could take a brand like Beckett and scale it to the moon. And like I said, they have the opportunity to make PSA and Beckett 1 and 2, Coke and Pepsi, and they own both. So
that's crazy thought. Yeah, for sure. One thing I will add though, when I saw this is that, just a few weeks ago, Will and Roy, we talked more in depth about what PSA is doing. And I don't know if you heard the last episode, Will came out with his own grading company called SECC, SECC, Surface Edge Corners. What was the other C stand for? What am I missing out of the subgrades? Surface Edge, Corners, and my goodness.
What would it be?
Our listeners...
Surface Edge.
What was the fourth?
Centering. Come on.
Centering, yes. Oh my god.
People are yelling, centering. It's centering. We've been talking about Beckett. It's centering.
Sorry guys, it's early still. We're recording this on a morning, Thursday morning. But anyway, and you listen to that episode. Will laid it out. It was amazing. But why am I bringing this up? Man, I lost my train of thought.
It was Will had this idea of a grading company.
Yes, but what was I saying before that? This episode is going off the rails right now. Okay, you know what? Actually, this is kind of what I was thinking about because I asked Will and Roy about it, and I don't think I asked you yet, but the new Beckett slabs. I don't know if you like it. It's very subtle to me. But are you a fan? The big change really is the auto grade is much smaller and on the front side of the slab, and the grade of the actual card is a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
And different font, slightly different font.
You
like it?
I always believe that you adapt to like it, because over time, no matter how much I like or dislike the design, I'm indifferent with the design, to be honest, but no matter what I believe now, I know in the future I will prefer the newer version over the old one, because the old one will just look outdated. Like the auto 10, people realize, do you know how inconsistent the color of and the font size, you know what I mean? It's just so much inconsistency with Beckett slabs, like the old slabs, that
True.
It's funny because you do this with cars too. A lot of people are like, oh, the new BMWs or the new Audis, whatever it is, oh, they're ugly. And then over time, you're like, man, the last generation was way outdated. It's like, I prefer this one now, right? So it's one of those things where I think I'm learning to like them more, I guess, over time, you know, and it looks more updated. So I'm for it, I guess.
Yeah, and it's very subjective, so I agree with that for sure. But the thing is, they did bring back the logo, the B with the laurels around it.
Yeah.
So they're bringing something back.
I like that. I like, you have to have some element of the classic Beckett that people resound with. Because if you totally change the brand, like I remember seeing the other design that they were looking at, and it looked like a totally different company. Like I remember like a few years ago, I don't know if it was like April Fool's Day or it was like they're launching a new Beckett design. It's like, nah, man, this isn't it. But I'm glad they kept the old Beckett logo.
Yeah, it's an homage to the heritage of Beckett. So I like that too. I want to take a step back because now I remember what I wanted to say before I lost my train of thought. When they talked about 100 new roles being, hiring 100 new roles across the operation, that reminds me of PSA saying they want to hire a lot more. I think 100 more. So it makes me wonder if that's enough to scale like PSA, which is already in the millions of cards.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And if they've done that for Beckett and it can only go from 4,000 to 7,000.
No,
I don't know if those numbers work out.
I think it's a proof of concept first. So it's like, you don't want to be number 2 right away. I think you have to see the market that Beckett brings in. It's different clientele. Who knows? Like there's going to be an influx of new Beckett users. So this is all market data. This is all proof of concept that they're building. And even then, by the time they have that proof of concept with Beckett now, I think technology becomes a factor of what's available at the time and how can they start implementing. Because I know for a fact that PSA cannot keep on scaling vertically the way they're scaling because, operational overhead costs on things that you could eliminate a lot of the problems within that kind of influx of operations with, I know people don't want to hear it, but AI, for instance. There's a lot of things that, and maybe they're doing this in the meantime, and I guarantee you they have a plan of something with technology. It's just, they can't rely on it right now because it's too new. So it's a process. We're going to start seeing implementation of technology, whether it's within the process, they're using more AI and technology, whether it's, actually your cards are going through, an AI process of grading where it takes out the human error, but humans are still involved in assembly or whatever it is, or part of the process. They're going to figure it out. And then they're going to apply that same system to something like Beckett once they get the proper market data.
Yeah, fair point. Yeah. And we'll see how it plays out ultimately as time goes on. All right, I got one last quote from the article. And they also, they did manage to talk with Nat Turner, CEO of Collectors. And he quoted, or he pretty much said, the subgrades that Beckett is known for isn't going anywhere. And Hudson, the GM, also tried to calm any fears of Beckett being consolidated into PSA anytime in the future. He says, quote, "To me, it's the best of both worlds, where we have the autonomy to pursue what we think is right for Beckett. And there's always notes that we can compare. I don't feel pressured in any way to okay, here's the way that you have to do things. It's really thinking through the lens of what's best for the customer, what's best for the hobby, and then execute.
Yeah.
End quote. So if you're a fan of Beckett, if you're a fan of Beckett slabs, does that make you feel better, or do you still have concerns that maybe in the future there might be things that get consolidated by PSA? Upcharges is number one up there probably. Maybe they push more collectors to grade with PSA by making crossover from from Beckett to PSA easier, just because the ROI of PSA slabs are still significantly higher. Any of those concerns cross your mind or no?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of concerns that can be potentials, and we won't know that, but you know what? We really don't have control over that. So like for me, I rather have the leader, coming from his own mouth that, this is what they're planning to do. And for me, it's the right thing to say and do. That's who I want as a leader to say that. Like he's basically saying we don't know what's going to happen, but our job is to make sure that we bring value towards the end consumer. And the thing is, we don't know how that looks. So it's like, he's not going to say anything is for certain, such as upcharges. We don't know. We just don't know. So it's like, what more can, you ask for, I guess, from someone who's strategically, doing all this. I think it's kind of like reassuring from my end, saying, okay, he got it. Like, as long as his mindset is in that frame, I'm happy with the direction of where the leadership. If the leader couldn't say that, for instance, I would be more worried.
Sure.
I'd be okay.
Right.
What's the intention? Is it money? Yeah. Is it like what's the goal here with Beckett? And if they're like not addressing that, the number one value is to address the concerns of whatever the market dictates, really. That's sure. You kind of have to go with that.
Yeah, I agree in large part. I guess the last question I really had was, is there anything you want to see from Beckett, like in terms of their process or their operations, or just, the grading in general that you haven't seen yet?
I think it's one experience, making it an experience. Like PSA somewhat does it, like whether it's card reveal, right. you get your card, you're excited with that, you're emotionally attached to PSA and the process, right? So it'd be like, creating the experience, the user experience really well so that people want to submit to Beckett. And I think it's a matter of time before us people, everyday buyers of sports card, realize how undervalued BGS slabs are. And there will be a market correction, which will go hand in hand with submissions, more people submitting. But with that said, I think there's tremendous value in buying opportunities in BGS 9.5 slabs. If I'll take a BGS 9.5 slab any day at 50% of a PSA 10, and I think it's just a matter of time before, I wouldn't say that it would ever be equal, but I think, when you're looking at a True Gem or True Net Gem Plus, it should be closer to a PSA 10 side than anything. And, I do believe that if the Pop Report still, values a BGS 10, slightly higher than a PSA 10. So, and then you got your Black Label, which is a different beast. I think the market, if the market could get to that point again where, I think that would be very healthy for Beckett.
Agree. And the one thing I would add is I think there's so much more they can do with the BGS 10 Black Label, right? Just keep it rare. Don't give it away. Don't get pressured into like, oh, we need to give more of these away because this is what people want. But if you keep it rare, anyone that gets a BGS 10 Black Label, they get access to something. Like, just create some kind of experience. You know what I mean? It's like something more that makes the BGS 10 Black Label even more special. Anyway, just throwing that idea out there, Hudson, for what it's worth. And yeah, I think there's something there you could play with. But anyway, lots to do with BGS. And I like what Will mentioned in our last episode. I think he's pretty convinced that Fanatics is going to come up with their own grading system or buy out another grading company. And, if that happens, certainly the game changes as well, because then there's another viable competitor, which could, have Collectors Inc. change their plans, right? So
I don't see it though.
Anything can happen.
I don't see it.
See it?
I don't see it. I don't see it. I don't see the need to, because if PSA smart, it would be more partnership value, and how do you work together to make more money, in the whole ecosystem, rather than trying to compete in every piece. You see what I'm saying? If they could,
Sure.
if one partner could push the volume and do the grading aspect really well, they could be very valuable for the other side, and they focus on what they're good at. And that expansion would be more valuable than trying to create marketplace tension, right? Where the partnership doesn't gain as much as what the competition would create.
Perhaps.
If that makes sense.
Perhaps.
Yeah. But we'll see. Yeah. Anything can happen. You're right.
Anything can happen. All right. Let's go on to our next segment, and it's called Rank Them. Okay, so we haven't done this ranking segment in a while. And the theme of this segment is Lionel Messi, who just broke the World Cup record this year for most goals in the tournament, with 18, I believe, and counting, because Argentina is still in the tourney as we record. So we know the rookie card for any Messi collector that is number one is the 2004 Panini Megacracks 71 bis, right? And so tie that with what we just talked about, grading. I'm going to give you 5 grades of the same card, and I want you to rank them in order from lowest value to highest value.
Wow.
Okay? So that card again is the 71 bis, the iconic Lionel Messi rookie. Okay. All right. So the 5 grades are BGS 7.5, BGS 8.5, BGS 9, and PSA 7, PSA 8. So which one do you think has the lowest value all the way to the highest value?
So what's the BGS again?
7.5, 8.5, and 9.
So 7.5 is the lowest.
Yes.
7.5 is the lowest. And then it goes 8.5 BGS?
Yep.
Then it goes, I want to say, man.
Where you slot the PSAs, that's where the...
Yeah. I would say PSA 7 next. BGS 8.5. PSA 8. And then what was the last one?
BGS 9.
And then BGS 9. Yeah.
Okay, so say that order again. BGS 7.5 is the lowest.
7.5 lowest. PSA 7.
Mm-hmm.
BGS 8.5. PSA 8. BGS 9. But I would not, with this card in particular, I don't know. There's such a big fluctuation between each PSA grade. I wouldn't be surprised if the PSA 8 outsold the BGS 9. But
BGS 9?
Yeah, I'm gonna keep it as that's what it should be.
Okay, locked in. So close. You got 2 incorrect, and it's not the one you think.
Really?
You got BGS 7.5 right. That was the easy one.
Yeah.
You got BGS 9 correct. That is the highest price sold recently. 34,000. The BGS 7.5 sold for 13.5. Okay, so those are the 2 extremes. In the middle, this is where you got wrong. It's not PSA 7. It's BGS 8.5 that's sold for
under
16.5.
Yeah, right.
The PSA 7 sold for just over 20.
That's crazy.
And then you got PSA 8 at 31,200, which goes to your point again. 31,200 for PSA 8 versus 34,000 for BGS 9. That's close enough where it could kind of flip each other, right? Every once in a while.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, but that just shows you in a bullish market, this is what you're dealing with. It's like people don't know what the real value is. So it's a guessing game of, I'm buying it at this cost. And the guy who bought the BGS 8.5 did really well. if you really think about it, because that PSA 7 comp helped him big time, right? So
for sure.
So it's not saying that that's what he has to sell it for.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Because that could be closer to the BGS 9 value, right?
That's true.
Eventually.
Yeah. And these 5 sales are the most recent. So yeah, if I gave you this question a month from now, the order can change.
It will change, because, like I said, it's not population 20,000 cards where like you have everyday sales either, right? So it's like you would have sporadic sales of these in terms of data, and days and weeks can mean a lot in our marketplace, right? Whereas if you have 10,000 or 20,000 Otani selling every day, you have every day the data of this is what the value is, as opposed to the big gaps that we're seeing. So
good point. Okay, let's finish off this episode with our regular weekly segment we call Pick One. All right, Chung, you got one for us to start?
Yes, I do. So I'm actually going soccer, and
Ooh,
I know,
but go ahead.
Soccer's big right now, or especially
sir.
World Cup, and very disappointing match yesterday with Korea. Yeah, just embarrassing, but we won't talk about that. We're going to talk about Messi and the 04 Panini, the Megacracks, number 71.
Yeah.
So PSA 10
Ooh.
last sold for, it says 960,000, but I thought there was a recent $1.5 million sale, but Card Letter has it at 960K. So we'll use the 960K. Okay. Which is huge. Like that's been, the highest it's ever been. So I'm pairing that up. All right. With, just recently the Lamine Yamal Topps Chrome Superfractor Auto. Right.
Yeah.
This guy's 18 years old. He's on the opposite spectrum of Messi, but he might be the next Messi type, I would say, hype player, right? Obviously, there's a lot. That sold for $396,000, okay? Which was a record sale too. So are you taking the chance and spending $400K on this Superfractor Auto of its 2023-2024 Topps Chrome? The Superfractor Auto, it's graded a PSA 8 Auto 10 versus the 2004 Megacracks number 71 Messi PSA 10 that sold for $960,000.
I mean, it's funny because lately I've been talking about my Superfractor strategy, because you only need one buyer that really evaluates the card super high to make a nice tidy profit. High risk, high reward. Classic high risk, high reward.
Right.
And Yamal showing what he can do already in this World Cup tournament. A lot of hype around him still. But I'm not, I'm not that much of a risk taker. and Lionel Messi, and that 1.5 million sale that was PSA 10, but it had the NBA certification on it too.
It was the rare one. Yeah.
Gold NBA. Yes.
Yeah.
So
the other one's a
1.5.
Pop 20 for the regular.
And I looked at that Pop 20, and that kind of convinced me. And like, that's super low. I'm gonna buy it and keep it in the bank, because that's as safe as you can be. So I'm going with Messi. No, you're not going for Yamal. Come on.
I think I am.
Wow.
I think the Superfractor has so much more room.
Yeah, definitely.
But it has a chance. But I also believe there's enough buyers in the Megacracks. But for $400K, for less than half of the price, I'm taking my chances. If it was equal dollar to dollar, then yeah, for sure, I think I would go.
Right.
The Messi, but the Yamal is like, I mean, that's a Superfractor Auto of Topps Chrome. Like that's his card. That's his card.
True.
And I think what he's doing at his age, he's incredible, man. And, soccer needed this too. Like it's the same thing as all the sports. I know we talk about the main, like football, basketball, and baseball, but what we've seen with soccer cards over the last, few years is pretty crazy too. And it's the same thing. It's the GOATs. It's the same story happening. The GOATs of the GOATs, the prices are absurd now in terms of super rare cards. So I'm going to take my chance on the Yamal just because, the price point at 400K versus $1 million, wow. I think there's a lot of room to grow.
Okay, I mean, I can't argue with you there, but yes, that's a crazy risk at that at that 6-figure number. But like I said, I'm a believer in the super fractor strategy, but maybe one thing that swayed me to go to the Messi side is our initial discussion off the top with young prospects and young rookies and young guys in general. A lot can happen, as they get older.
That's true.
So that's another risk factor with Yamal being so young, right?
Yeah.
So maybe that's what convinced me otherwise. But yeah, good one. Okay, it's funny you brought Messi because that's part of my 1v1. I just put in our chat so you can look at the cards. It's the Lionel Messi 2015 Flawless. Okay, Signatures Gold Proof autograph card. I believe it's a PSA 8. Yes, Auto 10. It's numbered to 2, so it's 2 of 2. Okay, it's a nice looking card in his Argentina uniform. He's pointing to the air like he's just scored a goal or he won a game. And then that sold for $102,000. Okay, on June 19th, last week. And on the other side, also sold for $102,000 exactly last week as well. The 2018 Impeccable Jalen Brunson Rookie Patch Auto Platinum, which is a PSA 10. And it's also a 1 of 1.
Yeah, that's
so 2 guys in the news right now. The hype's there.
The Messi is it's 2 of 2.
Yes,
that's crazy.
There's only 2 of that specific card. Yeah,
man. So I think Brunson's a dog. What he's done in New York is unbelievable and huge fan. Yeah, just amazing. But I think, hey, that $102,000 price could be actually, cheap, but like in the future, relatively. But man, I don't know, man. I think I think it's a definite sell period for Jalen Brunson right now. So I don't think I would be buying Jalen Brunson right now. I'm okay with buying Messi right now, even though both are, hyped up, because Messi, I think his upper end cards still have room. Where like Jalen Brunson, you never know because he's still playing, he still has, his career to, cement. He's doing a great job right now. A lot of things can happen and that road's going to be a long time. So for me, in this case, it's like, I know that Messi's cards are going to keep going up. He doesn't really have to do much. I mean, he's already did what he had to do.
Cemented his legacy already.
Yeah,
yes.
And the card market's crazy right now. So Messi is correcting. So I think Jalen Brunson will correct too, but not in the same way as Messi. So that's why.
No, it's good reasoning. Good logic. I'm going to play the hobby logic card. Okay, probably doesn't make sense, but I'm going out on a limb. I'm gonna go Brunson.
Really?
Because it's a 1 of 1. It's a rookie patch auto. Okay, it's not like a 2015 non-rookie year, right? That has it going for it. And if Jalen Brunson won a championship in any other city, it will be Messi, right? But we know New York Knicks, the mecca of basketball. Okay, there's going to be buyers. Look at this. Look at the front. What's that? The courtside seats. Just look at all those guys there. They could afford 6-figure card any day of the week. We even got his teammate Kat, who's into collecting. Maybe he's interested in buying, his teammates 1 of 1 rookie patch auto, right? I'm just saying there are some limited buyers, yes, but Spike Lee maybe. Ben Stiller, maybe.
Yeah.
Jerry Seinfeld, maybe. Larry David, maybe.
Any New York legend is in.
Yeah. So for those reasons, I'm going to take
you
the risk.
you would basically have a $1.1 million package with the Megacrack PSA 10, and Jalen Brunson 101. I rather have for $500,000 the Messi 2 of 2 and the Yamal auto, the Superfractor auto for 500. Interesting.
All right, that's how you're spending your money. Okay.
Nice.
All right, another great episode. Appreciate all the listeners out there, and we'll have a brand new episode for you guys on Friday. Talk to you then. Bye. Hey, thanks for listening to Cards to the Moon. We'd really appreciate you subscribing to our podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. And you can also connect with each of us on Instagram at 5cardguys, or you can follow Hyung at Integrity Sports Cards, or John at TradeU at Recess. You can also check us out at 5cardguys.com. Thanks again, and hope to connect soon.